Hello guys, let me share my screen. So we continue discussion on MSI roadmap for milestone 3, and this meeting, this grooming would be solely devoted to the store pickup functionality, because after the first grooming session, I've got a lot of requests, a lot of questions regarding especially devoted to the store pickup functionality, when it's going to be implemented, what's the timeline for store pickup implementation, whether we are ready to commit that it would be implemented in the scope of milestone 3, and whether it would be ready before 2.3.1 release of Magento. And the main question, how it's going to be implemented, how it will affect the existing look and feel for both customer and merchant, and how many efforts need to be introduced to implement the store pickup functionality in Magento, supporting the multi-source inventory. So today we will talk about the functionality of the store pickup, and I will describe the proposal, how the store pickup can be implemented in the MVP functionality. So the MVP stands for the minimal viable product. Also, we have several honored guests invited to this meeting, and one of these guests, Paul, will demonstrate how they implemented store pickup, and he will share his experience and insight regarding how it's better to implement, or how it's better not to implement the store pickup for Magento. So if you don't mind, I can make the short presentation, the brief presentation of the proposal, which I prepared for today's demo meeting, and I will describe how the MVP version of store pickup can be implemented. Let me share this link to this document to MSI Slack channel, so you can open it on your own laptops, PCs, and I will be reading it from my screen. So the main idea how the store pickup can be implemented in the Magento, supporting the multi-source inventory. So actually, the main idea that how the store pickup will affect the customer, and how it's going to be implemented from the customer point of view. So from the customer, actually, we don't interfere, and we are not going to affect the existing product page, and the store pickup would be added as additional shipping method, and when the order is being placed, at the shipping step, we introduce an ability to choose a store pickup out of the allowed shipping method. So currently, you can see how it looks like right now, how it's implemented right now. So on the shipping step, customer is allowed to choose among the allowed shipping method, what the particular shipping method he would like to choose. And the main idea here to introduce a dedicated shipping method, the store pickup, and choosing the store pickup, customer can choose particular source in the scope of the given stock, which should be used to fulfill the order. Here we want to introduce pretty important assumption that each order should be fulfilled just from one and only one pickup location. So we consider the the pickup location as a shipping address. And we want to introduce a limitation that it should not be possible to choose, to specify a different pickup location for different cart items. So for example, in case of this order, you can see that there are two different order items, or at this time, these are cart items. And we propose to introduce a limitation that it's not possible to specify different pickup location for different cart items in the scope of one order. Actually, we can implement this functionality, but this functionality would be pretty similar to the existing multi-shipping. So how the existing multi-shipping works? Under the hood, we will create several orders, each one for which will correspond to particular shipping address. So, for example, if we will allow to specify store pickup based on the cart item, and the different pickup location gonna be chosen for these two cart items. Under the hood, we will create two different orders, and so this is pretty similar how the multi-shipping works. Potentially, even we can make an integration with the multi-shipping and consider this as a case of the multi-shipping to different store pickup locations. But in minimal viable product in a minimal viable product version, it is proposed to avoid integration with multi-shipping and provide an ability to choose a single store pickup location from, let's say, drop-down box. So how it's gonna look like? So in a shipping method, we choose a store pickup, and after we choose a store pickup, the drop-down box appears with all possible pickup locations. And here you can see that the address, shipping address, will disappear because we will use the shipping address of the source. So we will use the source address as a shipping address in this case. And here, it's still an open question. Probably it's technical. It's more technical than a functional one. Whether we have to add the source selected for the store pickup as an extension attribute for the order created, or we can just check the shipping address that it matches to the one of the addresses of our sources. And based on the address match, we can decide that that order was placed as a store pickup order. So here is the question which I raised, and currently I don't know. So probably the explicit extension attribute is better, but still we can avoid it using the check whether the shipping addresses match. And also there is pretty interesting case which we should handle. If there are not enough quantity on the specified source to fulfill the order, and the internal transportation from other sources should be made to the selected one to actually fulfill that order. So let's consider the example when we have three different sources: source A, source B, and source C. This source A contains 5 items of SKU1. Source B contains 4 items of SKU1, and source C contains just 1 item of SKU1. So currently our saleable quantity is 10. So because we just sum up all quantities all together, which give us 5 plus 4 plus 1. And if customer has ordered 8 items of SKU1, and at the shipment step he chose source A for the store pickup. Currently, we see that we are not able to fulfill this order because currently source A contains just 5 items. So we need to, what the system does in this case. So because the initial vision of the store pickup was to create the corresponding stocks for each particular source. But that will introduce quite a lot of indexation, and that could be redundant. That's why I tried to avoid it as much as possible, and I wanted to reuse our existing indexation mechanism. So in this proposal, I described that we will still make the reservation as we do it right now. So we will place the reservation for 8 items of SKU1 on custom stock. So as you know, we place MSI support reservation on the stock level, but not on the source one. And we don't want to introduce, at least at this particular situation, we don't introduce the source level reservation. So that we'll still create the reservation for custom stock, which will affect our saleable quantity. And but in the order object, we will specify that this order gonna be fulfilled from the source A. And here merchant have to make the internal transportation of 3 items from source B to source A to fulfill this order. And when the required transportation would be done, merchant have to initiate the delivery of the ready for pickup email, which will notify customer that order is ready for store pickup, and he can come to this particular location and grab the prepared items. So this is actually how the proposed functionality affects customer. And here how it affects merchant. So merchant should be able to specify for sources. He should be able to specify whether particular source support the store pickup functionality or not. So, for example, we have the brick and mortar store, and brick and mortar store supposed to support the store pickup functionality. In case if you have the warehouse, maybe warehouse should not support the store pickup functionality, so that it is proposed to introduce dedicated extension attribute for our source entities, and the ability to specify this attribute via both admin panel on the source editing page, as well as REST API to specify this attribute whether source is support store pickup or not. And based on the existing of this attribute, we will add particular source to this drop-down box. So in the drop-down box would be just sources filtered by this attribute. And one pretty important note here is that for all the orders placed with the store pickup shipping method, we have to skip the source selection algorithm step, because we no need to run the source selection algorithm, because we know in advance from which particular source we want to fulfill the order. So, so that this step should be skipped, but along with that, we have to notify merchant that some internal transportation need to be done to fulfill the order if, like in the case what I described earlier, if we don't have enough quantity on particular source to fulfill the order. So probably we can introduce this check for merchant on the shipment step and check whether we have enough quantity to fulfill that order, or some internal transportation need to be applied here. This is actually this is probably all from my brief description. If there are any questions, let's discuss them together.
Thanks, Igor. So, do we have any ability to, or have we thought about giving the merchant an option of whether they want to do that transfer or not? What I mean is, in this example, if they had ordered 8 of SKU 1 and they had selected source A for store pickup, that we wouldn't allow them to complete it because there's just not enough there. I mean, some merchants may not want to have to transfer the inventory just to be able to fulfill the order. They want to be restricted to only fulfilling orders with the inventory they have.
The issue is that currently we consider our stock as a scope, and
Right.
currently, like the stock is determined for customer as soon as he comes to the Magento website. So we check whether whether product is accessible or not, like whether it's in stock or out of stock in the scope of particular stock. And if we will allow to check quantities based on the source level, we will be switching this scope, and that will introduce additional complication for us. Or if we will provide if we will just and moreover, like we don't know, like potentially we can introduce stocks per sources, but that this can lead to quantity inconsistency, because in this case we will place the reservation not on a global stock, like not on a custom stock, but we will place a reservation for stock which represents the source A. And remember our previous discussion when why we don't recommend to assign the same source to different stocks, because the reservation could be placed to one stock, and we don't consider that actually it affects the quantity of product on another stock as well. And so that it can lead to the situation when we will sell more products that we actually have in our sellable quantity. So we can oversell. Because
Right. No, I understand that scenario, and I understand how all of that works. I'm just thinking about this from a merchant perspective, because they could get some really ugly scenarios. Or imagine they have, say, 3 sources that are all in a stock. It's assigned to the one website that they have. So somebody places an order for 3 items, like they want to get, 3 T-shirts. So it's in stock because they have maybe 1 in each source. So they're going to say, okay, great, I want to get it from source A, and they complete their checkout. Now the merchant has 1 T-shirt in A, 1 in B, and 1 in C. They have to get 2 shirts from B and C to A before they can let the customer know they can come by and pick them up. That seems quite difficult, or at least that they wouldn't know they would have that extra expense up front. It would only be after the order came in. Now, what the merchant could do, like you said, is they could create another. Well, actually, they can't. I was going to say they can't because it's one software website. I could say they could create a stock just for store pickup, but that actually wouldn't work.
Potentially, we can introduce this check and add to the drop-down just pickup location, which can fulfill the order. But in this case, we can come to the situation when we can't place the order with the store pickup, because, for example, in this case, when customer
and we can also oversell in this situation because we're not making a reservation to the source level.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is if we create a store pickup feature in the way you've described here, I would just want to be very clear on the types of merchant use cases that it covers and the ones that it does not. Because it doesn't have reservation at the source level or selecting pickup at the source level, it's okay. It's just it's less robust than if we did so. So in order to use this feature as a merchant, you need to be a couple different things. Either you stock products in particular sources. So, T-shirt 1, 2, 3, you only put in one of your sources. Actually, that wouldn't be any better because imagine it's the same scenario where I have T-shirt 1, 2, 3, I only stock it in one of my sources, but I have 3 sources assigned to my stock. The customer can really pick any of those 3 sources as their pickup location. Then if they have selected one where shirt 1, 2, 3 is not in the source, the merchant has to transfer it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Can
really
I
to
jump
use
in
sure.
for a second?
Yeah.
In the cases where we had this scenario, we usually had a central warehouse and an actual store. And in practice, we didn't ever get to the situation that we needed multiple sources for products to be cross-docked to the how do I say it, to be delivered to the actual store where the customer is picking it up, and all our customers that implement this case, they said it's our own risk that we have double or triple shipments internally, and it should go with and it preferably should go through the actual central warehouse. So I think it's in general it's a much better, it's a big step forward from having nothing in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I understand that. So I just want to be clear on what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So then when we are essentially describing the feature to merchants, they understand whether it will meet their use cases. So the situation that you described where there's a central warehouse and more likely than not, as orders come in, then they're dispatched from the central warehouse to the place it needs to be picked up. And then the customer is notified that it's available for pickup. That would work just fine.
Yeah.
And from a saleability perspective, you would just have all the inventory of the central warehouse as a part of the stock, and then pickup from the central warehouse would be disabled. So the inventory would be there, but pickup would not be allowed, and it would understand the quantities correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems about right, I think. I haven't got anything other to add. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Igor, have we thought through how the notification works? What I mean by that is the customer needs to be notified. It's different from their order completion. So they would get a regular order completion email or order confirmation email, sorry. Normally they get a shipment email. So in this case, it's not actually being shipped, but it's ready for pickup. So do we have in mind that they're going to create that in a way that they would create a shipment, essentially? They're going to create a available for pickup notification?
That's the topic I also wanted to discuss. But this is probably the step which is supposed to substitute the source selection algorithm. So in this case, merchant has to make sure that there are enough quantity to fulfill the order on the selected pickup location, and seeing that it is enough, he can just initiate the process of this notification. So I thought.
Okay, so we have a couple restrictions. The first is any order that is store pickup must be entirely store pickup, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So all the items must be store pickup, and then we can run in similar to how we do now on the source selection page. The source selection algorithm makes a proposal, and then when you make shipments, you have to define one source at a time. So the merchant can select the source Well, actually, the source would be pre-selected because it's been selected by the customer. But then we know the inventory available in those sources. And so the merchant can go ahead and click, this is available now, but we can check it. So we could, we can grade how to prevent them from clicking it if there's not sufficient inventory.
Yeah, actually, we can prevent them to go to the shipment step and notify them.
Right. Right. With, of course, that this is never fully, I would say it's never fully guaranteed, but it is. What I meant by that is because we don't make a reservation at the source level. So when I click that notification, the compensation reservation would happen right at that moment. So before the customer gets there, but when I tell them, that's when we decrement the inventory.
Yeah, so the compensation reservation would be created at the time of shipment, but this is also pretty interesting, like how we will implement, or whether we need to implement internal transfer at all, or in this case, merchant will just like open the product page and move quantity from one source to another.
For MVP, they can do that, yeah. I mean, that's already supported. They just have to, lower one value and increase another one from the product page. The other thing to think about is how we track which orders have or have not been picked up. So we decrement the actual quantity when we create this shipment / notification, whatever we call it. But then the customer hasn't yet picked up those items. So how do we keep track of that status of whether they've picked them up or not? We don't have anything in our existing order status flow that would track that. I mean, the easiest thing is we can just ignore it and say that it's up to the merchant to keep track of that, which orders haven't been picked up.
But in any case, we have to proceed with the shipment. We need to create the compensational reservation. If you just ignore, we'll get the wrong quantity because the reservation wouldn't be compensated.
I think that's a similar scenario when you are shipping to the customer and you don't know if the order was really received by the customer. You don't have this flow also in Magento.
Right. Well, so in that case, the core Magento way, we decrement the stock at the time of shipment. And I guess we're handling the rest with tracking information because the shipment, assuming it's been invoiced and then is shipped, will go to complete. I'm sorry, go to at the time of shipment. So we could put in. I guess tracking number doesn't really make, or tracking information doesn't make sense in this scenario.
I think the actual proposal would be to actually introduce a shipment status where you can actually track certain statuses of the shipment, and the shipment's more of a shipment document than the actual than it's currently actually shipped, because the current way shipment is created isn't actually shipment, but it's more of a package, because a customer usually creates a shipment when they have the track and trace code, and then they do it then they do it in the box, close the box, and then they create a shipment in Magento. And that isn't actually the same as the moment when the barcode is actually scanned by the carrier, and then when the product is actually shipped in that sense. So it might be interesting to introduce some steps in the shipment, but maybe that's too big of a change.
Right. So right now we actually don't do anything for this scenario. I mean, everything you described is correct. We make the shipment, decrement the inventory, and that's at the time of label creation, which, as you said, may be different, or it's pretty much always different from when it gets picked up and scanned into the carrier system.
Yeah.
But at that point, if the package is not delivered, the package is late, or anything like that, that's pretty much outside of Magento. It's going to fall to the customer to contact customer service and say, hey, I never got my order. At which point the merchant can take a variety of actions, sending another, refunding, whatever they want to do. But doesn't have to be on the original order.
Mm-hmm.
So we can handle this in the same way. That I guess my question to you is: do you have any experience with how common with this is? Is this even a real problem that people do not come and collect their store pickup items or forget about them? Or
give me a sec. I'll log into one of the admin panels of our customers.
Okay. I can stop sharing my screen, and if you want, you can just.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to figure out the admin URL. Give me a second.
The only challenge here that's a bit distinct, like if I ship my regular orders and I want to keep track of, were they delivered? Were they signed for? Did they get lost? Are they coming back to me? I can do that through the carrier, or a third party, a ShipStation or some other third party software. I can see that status. For these, if I wanted to go in the system and say, okay, who hasn't picked up their order yet that's available, I don't really have any way to get that information. I mean, I could look at, maybe we could make a report, or I could filter the grid on, show me all orders that are store pickup by source. But again, that would just show all the orders. It wouldn't show whether they had been picked up or not.
I think in our case, it's up to we haven't actually implemented anything in Magento because it's too much of a chore for every store employee to actually register their shipment in Magento, so they won't do it anyways. Because when you have the 300 physical stores and each have 10 employees, it's undoable to actually teach them all how to actually do it. So in our case, the package gets shipped from the warehouse to the store, and then it's up to the store to actually track them, and then they'll get punished in some way if they don't follow the actual procedure to actually notify when order needs to be canceled, and then the central warehouse will actually cancel the order or credit the order in Magento.
Yeah. And then maybe it's just how they assign the responsibility, because there would be a packing slip or shipment information most likely attached to that. So the store employee there is going to have to pick it, and they keep it in an area where they're waiting for the customer to come. And then it's just on them to notice that, this box has been here for 2 weeks. The information is on the top of it on that pack slip, so we should get in contact with
Yeah. I think at the time we discussed it extensively how to actually implement it, and came to the conclusion that it would be fairly difficult to actually automate something in this regard. And it's the faults will happen if the store just don't knows what to do and how to handle it, and that is where the problem lies. But because they have the physical product that they can see that they have to cancel, so that's their status in that sense. Right. That was my part.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Igor. So it sounds like I think for MVP, we can do this for sure. The idea of introducing a custom tracking status or a pickup status, or it sounds like a very involved epic to do so.
Yes, but probably we have several questions from the UI UX perspective. Whether we need to introduce a dedicated step instead of the source selection algorithm, or at least some, I don't know, like a model window saying that currently it's not enough product on the selected source. So how this step should look like, how this notification mechanism should look like.
Yeah, it's a question for UX. So right now you're familiar with the order screen where they would click the button ship,
Yeah,
and then it's going to present the SSA.
I can share it right now. Let me find the correct tab.
So yeah, so while you're doing that, so they can create a shipment. There's a couple ways we could do it, which is why we need to ask UX for their opinion. But for example, we could have a button in that there instead of ship says pickup, and we can have logic to that button is displayed if it's a pickup order instead of ship. And then when they clicked that page, they would get taken to a different screen that we would create that would contain relevant information for a pickup order. So yeah, on this one, ignoring invoicing, we have a ship button in the header. It's just a text, I suppose. If you click on that, I will see the source selection page.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question for UX, but we may replace that with, because all orders have to be one or the other, we know with certainty if an order is a pickup order, and we can display, I don't know, some term pickup or pick or something like that. I'm just thinking of the actual steps. The merchant has to get it ready for the customer to come in. So what they're actually doing here is notifying the customer that it has already been picked. It's already, that it's waiting for them.
Yeah.
And this screen would have something, it would have a different layout, but similar to this, it would just verify I have all the items in the order, and it would show that there's sufficient quantity for each of those items. And then they would click OK, and the customer's going to get an email.
Yeah. So
we should have a BCC option on this email as well if it needs to go to a store manager or something by source.
Yeah, so I have an opinion about this, and I don't know if that solves the issue. So at the current moment, you have the source selection algorithm, which will return the quantities for a certain, well, exactly an example right here. But when you select a certain store for pickup, you aren't actually selecting a source, but you're preferring a source where the quantities needs to be deducted from. So in that sense, you only create a preference. It will go in the source selection algorithm, and the source selection algorithm will take the preference in account, and then will return the quantities how it suggested you will deduct it. And then if it can't find the preferred solution, it will just return another solution, and will just say, like, for example, in this example, it will say 9.1 or something, and then you see it in this interface, and you actually know that you have a weird situation. Does that make sense?
So you're saying it would essentially, if there's insufficient quantity in the source that the customer selected, it's going to propose the transfers.
So it will show it. You can't actually deduct it from the stock from the actual physical store, and then it will just give the second best option it has, because you actually have to do something. And I think it's more of a business issue that you don't have the inventory available in the store, and that you should have more inventory available, because if you don't have it available, your issue is in inventory management, and it isn't actually in the sales.
I think we should definitely prevent the merchant from sending an email to the customer until there's sufficient quantity. But what this page can surface is the fact that they don't have sufficient quantity, and maybe alternative sources where they do have the quantity. Then they would have to leave this page and go back and make that inventory transfer.
I have a second point. When you're placing the order with that shipping addresses will be hidden at the checkout, but the actual order that is placed will have the shipping address will be set to the store, to the physical store. And so when the source and the physical store are the same, the shipment will go to its own location, which is of course you have to pick it up. You have to move it from the shelf to the pickup location. So you have to do some very little stock movement. But if it's from a different source to the actual physical store, if the shipping address will be that one of the physical stores, so the when creating the shipment won't actually go to the end customer, but will go to the physical store. And in our case, what we did is we actually communicated the tracking code of that physical transfer to the store, and communicated that to the customer, so it automatically got the package was delivered at the store. In that sense, you understand what I'm trying to say?
So you actually used Magento to track shipments between stores?
Yeah, so in this specific case, when the store doesn't have the inventory available, and when we use Magento to track it. Exactly.
Right, so you would make a shipment, say, from source B to source A.
Yeah, but we just use the information from the sales order. So I can show you.
Yeah, that would probably be useful. It's I understand. Yeah, we have the source address for every source in the system.
I'm not sure if you can. The green line is a bit odd on my screen. I'm not sure what you're seeing. So are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, we see the grid.
Oh yeah. So you see a grid, and let me show you one. So this product has been as a status shipped to store, and so this is the address of the customer, and this is the actual address of the physical store. So this is Magento 1 for your information, and this is the shipment that's actually created, and it will be shipped to the physical store. And but so the track and trace email has been sent to the end customer, and we've created a custom email template that will actually mention, your package is currently on the way to the physical store, and we will notify you when it's delivered at the physical store, and then you will get another email. So in this case, we use that for the pickup in store functionality.
Right.
Does this make sense?
Yes, it does. It's quite a few custom steps there that you've put in.
So it are quite a few custom steps, but the few things. The part over here is a module that we've installed. It's a Dutch carrier. So I know it's quite custom, but the difference is, but the idea is that we do have to have a shipment in Magento available that's actually shipment from a different source to the actual physical store, and that is so with that shipment you can actually track where the product is and when that shipment is delivered. You can actually so in this case you can actually make the shipment, because you have to write hooks to actually create an warehouse connector, API connector or something, because you actually use the shipment functionality of Magento in this case.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to think of the steps involved here. So with what we have in MSI, we could do this. What I proposed earlier for store pickup orders, we would only show a pick instead of ship, then that wouldn't work. So we'd have to have the ability to do both. Either you can send an email to the customer letting them know that the product is available for pickup, meaning you have sufficient quantity in the source the customer selected. In that case, you send the email and the stock deduction is made at that moment. The other option is if there's not sufficient quantity, the system or Magento will prevent the merchant from sending that email, but it would allow them to create shipments, one or more shipments, and those shipments would be from another source to the source the customer selected. And they essentially can keep going through that process until there's sufficient quantity in the source the customer wants, and then they can send the pickup email.
Yeah, sounds reasonable, I think. And it especially sounds reasonable for V1 for the first version, because I think it's I think it's also something the community will build upon and maybe expand further on this. And I think.
So all we're doing there, I mean, again, this is a question for UX, but potentially if we add a pickup button, it's going to do what I described before. It's going to verify there's sufficient quantity for everything in the order, allow them maybe to add a comment or something, and then go ahead and click pickup, and the customer will get an email that it's ready. That will only be possible if there's sufficient quantity. If there's not sufficient quantity, they couldn't proceed past that screen, but they can go back to the regular order page, click ship, and generate shipments that would move things around. Of course, that quantity would only truly be moved. It would be decremented when the shipments were made. It would only be received by somebody receiving the package. So somebody at the store either has to receive that and update the quantity in the receiving source in Magento, or if they're doing it in the ERP or somewhere else, they would do it in their regular process in the ERP, and the inventory would get updated to Magento, at which time there would be sufficient inventory for them to do the pickup step.
Mark, do I understand you correct that you propose to use existing shipment mechanism for the internal transportation of goods among the sources?
Yes.
So it's not gonna be done via the product editing page, but via the shipment. Because in this case, I believe we will have some issues with mathematics, because we would not, like, currently our goal is to compensate the full order. Like if you place initial reservation, you have to compensate, and the sum of all reservation placed in the scope of one order should be 0. And now, because for example, in the example I provide from the beginning, where we have to make the internal transportation of 3 items, we will ship these 3 items, and after that we have, the merchant can click the pickup button, and
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We're doing a deduction twice. So we would, as it is now, we would do a deduction when they make that shipment, and then we would do another deduction when they do the pickup. So it's been over deducted.
and also
Well, actually, no. That's fine. That's correct, because that's not accounting for the fact that the quantity is going up when it's received at the source it was sent to. So if I need to move 3 from source B to source A, I create a shipment on source B, and 3 are deducted, or we have a compensation reservation for 3. It arrives, the package arrives at source A, and then someone has to, increment the inventory by 3. Then there's sufficient inventory for the pickup to happen. They click pickup, and we decrement 3 from source A. So it's sort of, -3 plus 3 minus 3.
by the way, how the credit memo supposed to work in this case? I suppose that we should not make the return to the source B in case we have all the products on the source A, because we now need this unnecessary delivery if, for example, if customer for some reasons don't want to pick up the order.
You mean if they do a credit memo and they check return to stock, which source does it go to? I'm thinking, because right now we don't actually give them that option, right? It's whichever one was shipped. How are we making that decision right now, independent of store pickup?
So currently, if customer if you want to play the credit memo and we check the return to stock, we determine. So for example, we have particular product, and this product is located on several sources, for example, source B and source C. So we apply the source priority, and we make the hook return to the source which has this product allocated, like source B and source C, and return to the source with the highest priority. So potentially, if we place an order and there are like two items like chair and some bottle of beers, so we prevent the situation when we return beer to the source which holds just the furniture. So we'll make a return to the source which stores the beer, but the source with the highest priority among all the other sources which hold the beer. So this.
So that's how it works now. It just returns to the highest priority source where the product is stocked.
Yep.
I mean, the easiest way to handle it is just it gets returned to the source that the customer selected for pickup.
Yeah. So that was my idea how we should do it in case of the store pickup. But also, like in this case, when we had the internal transition from the source B to source A, I suppose that in case if the order would be refunded, we no need to get back the 3 items to the source B from source A if we already have this all 8 items allocated on the source A. We can just leave it as this.
Yeah.
Okay, so in case, yeah.
So in case of credit memo for a pickup order with return to stock checked, it will be returned to the source selected for pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And that will only be one source because we require all pickup orders to be not split.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so looks like we have a solution, but now we need to create the corresponding ticket for our UX guys to provide this page, which will come instead of the source selection algorithm. And do we need to like this pickup button is going to be just a button which checks that we have enough products on the selected source to fulfill the order and initiate the notification email, or should we do anything else? I mean, is it just a button which you click and some notification that like saying to merchant that we notify customers that order can be picked up, or it's gonna be like like additional page there, which I don't know.
Well, the purpose of the page, yeah, is to account for the fact that the merchant has to decide when to tell the customer it's available.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, say they have, the customer's ordered 1 and the store has 1,000 in the back room, someone still has to walk to the back room, pick one of them out and put it in the, by the pickup counter. So there is a step there that needs to take place before they can let the customer know.
Okay, clear. So looks like we are good, and
I had one other. I'm sure there'll be more things as we work through the UX, but we're allowing them to make these internal shipments using our existing shipment mechanism. But our existing shipment mechanism pulls shipping address. It would take the customer's address. And that's not what the merchant wants to create. The merchant wants to create a shipment from one source to another, not to the customer.
So in this case, we should consider the shipping address as the address of the selected source.
Right, so we have to actually modify the shipment behavior for orders that are pickup orders. And it can allow shipments, but it can only allow source and destination addresses that are sources.
Yes. Yes.
So they would just have both a source and the destination would just be drop downs.
Do you want to introduce some kind of drop down of existing sources except the selected one, and the ability to specify the quantity?
Yes, they have to, just as we would allow today for a partial shipment, they have to specify the quantity. Because if you just click ship right now, it will propose the whole order.
Yes.
And that's not what we actually want to do. We want to ship just the pieces that are required to meet the minimum for fulfillment.
And so here we need to describe it more clearly how we want to see this customization of shipment, because currently, like by default, as you said, it's gonna be provided whole number of ordered items to be shipped. So do we need to provide just the rest, which we don't have, like in this case 3? If the order was 8 and we have 5, so in case of store pickup, should we provide like to ship 3 required?
Yeah, it's a challenge because I can immediately think of a use case where I have 200 line items in the order and I want to get it from source A, or that's what the customer has requested. And I have 199 in A, but I have 1 in source B.
Yep.
I have to ship that one over. I don't want to have to go through and enter a 0 199 times and then ship the one that I want.
And our shipment page. So
but we can keep the shipment page the same and just change what is proposed. What I mean by that is we will propose shipments for things that are below the quantity in source A in this scenario. So in the one I just gave of the 200 items, we know we have enough in source A of 199 items, so we'll propose to ship 0 of those.
But currently, our shipment mechanism implemented in a way that it's able to specify just one source and one destination point. This is actually why we introduced the source selection algorithm to specify what particular source should be used to make the shipment. But in case if we want to make this internal transportation, for example, in the case I described, if we have 2 cart items and we ordered like 2 products, SKU1 and SKU2, and both products need to be internally transported to source A. So for example, like SKU1 should be transported from source B, but SKU2 should be transported from source C. So we can't do this on the same page. So again, to introduce some kind of source selection algorithm, and after that proceed to the shipment page. To make a decision.
I'm not sure that that's overcomplicating it, because the way we do it now for existing shipments is fine, which is you can make as many shipments as you want until you've shipped all the quantity.
Maybe that's true, but I mean that in this case we need to utilize our source selection algorithm as well. So it makes sense for this internal transportation.
So it's going to make a proposal of what internal transfer should be done, is what you're saying.
Yep.
And then when it makes the proposal, the merchant will select one source at a time,
yep.
Create the shipment, and then they can continue they can go back through the process until they've done all the internal transfers that are necessary.
Yes.
Okay. And we are out of time for today, but we'll have to go through this with UX for sure.
Uh-huh.
On this.
So can you please create a corresponding ticket for the UX guys, and maybe to have with you again? Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
And I met with him yesterday on our other question on distance-based algorithms. So he's working on that. I'll add this to our next meeting.
Hey guys, I have to go. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, bye-bye.
That's probably all for us as well, because we are running out of time for this meeting. So looks like we almost have a working decision. Just need to make it like the final step and get the UI, and think how we will proceed with this internal transportation. How we will customize the shipment. So this looks like a good agenda for the next meeting.
Yep.
Thank you very much for the fruitful discussion, and see you next time on the probably the next one gonna be Friday's demo meeting, and we can also discuss this topic there as well.
Nice.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.